ISIS and Al Qaeda, nothing but a creation of the United States and the West to create havoc in this region.
You're watching The Gist on Stat News Global. I'm Ramananda Sengupta. Our very special guest today is Dr. Waiel Awwad. He's a senior journalist and vice president with MENA and a distinguished fellow, West Asia at the Tillotoma Foundation. And today we're going to be talking about the events in Syria, and there's no better person than Dr. Awwad to talk to us about it. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you so much. Pleasure's mine.
I just wanted to understand, how significant is this, recent developments that have happened, the fall of Aleppo? Who are these people who have attacked? It's some jihadist outfits from what I heard. What does it mean for?
Oh, yes. Since 2011, we have been facing terrorism, and we have been facing the terrorist organization recognized by the UN, United Nations, as a terrorist organization, which is Al Qaeda and ISIS, which have created havoc inside Syria. And those parts of Syria in 2013 and 2016, we liberated also our Aleppo city and most part of Syria. But major part, 1/3 of Syria was occupied by Turkey, which is known as Idlib province in the northern eastern part of Syria. And 1/3 was also occupied, the northern western of Syria, by the United States. Illegal occupation are there already. And there, Americans are sheltering around 60,000 terrorists from ISIS, according to UN agencies. And Erdogan, the Turkish president, is sheltering and treating and training more than 55,000 terrorists inside Idlib, which they have been there for since the revolt against the Syrian government. And most of these groups, everybody knows that these are the terrorist organizations. They have been affiliated to Al Qaeda, and they are already being changed their name, changing their dress to make themselves look like the modern terrorist organization. But the fact of the matter, everybody knows that from the Oghur, from the Uzbek, from the Turkmenistan, you can hear the language they are speaking. You can see them on the street talking in their own language, and they're attacking. So they had no belonging to the Syrian opposition. But because of the war on Lebanon and Gaza, actually by Israel, you can see that the Israelis are failed in their operation till now in Gaza. In Lebanon, there was a ceasefire, and immediately after the ceasefire, Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, threatened the Syrian government, and he told Syrian President Assad is dealing with playing with fire. And immediately the intelligence of Israel and Turkey met together. And when they met together, immediately this attack took place, and they have conquered part of Syria again. And we will watch and see that the Syrian army will repulse it.
I see. So, but if you look at the situation on the ground there, how significant is the fall of Aleppo?
Oh, it's very significant. In fact, Aleppo is considered like Bombay for India, which is the major industrial city of Syria, and a large population stays there. It is the bank, center bank, the railways, the textile, the industry, everything in Syria, in fact, is based in that city. And if you remember, during the first time of invasion or the occupation by these forces, most of the factory, around 1,500 factories inside Aleppo, were dismantled and taken into Turkey. So you can imagine the importance of this city. However, the people of the city are reluctant and repulsing even the attack by these terrorist organizations, but it is a significant fall, no doubt about it.
I see. So, how would you sort of qualify the involvement of the Russians and the Americans in this whole thing?
Well, you see, the Russian, when they intervened in Syria in 2015, because at that time they wanted to stop the advances of Al Qaeda and ISIS, because if these terrorist organizations take over Syria, the terrorism will start back again into Syria, Iraq, Iran, and spread back into South Asia. So therefore, everybody knows that the terrorist organization now has been used as a tool to achieve a political objective by a vested interest nation. So therefore, Turkey, who was trying to look as a moderate Islam leader and wanted to revive the new Ottoman in this world, have led most of the Arab Spring from 2011. But now, with the internal situation in Turkey is in dire consequences, Erdogan is facing lots of pressure. And beside the American, Mr. Trump is coming, and maybe the question of removing Turkey from NATO has forced the president of Turkey to make this organization active again, to make sure that he can be the watchdog for the American. The Russians continue to have their military bases in Syria, and they're already joining hands with the Syrian government, attacking the position of those terrorist organizations inside Syria. Iran, for some time, they have also maintained their presence there. And if you notice, if you look at the events and the picture coming from there, you know that Israel have been trying to destroy most of those bases, military bases of the Syrian army. Where they failed, those terrorist organizations, now they have invaded, they are confiscating the weapon there, and they're destroying the infrastructure of Syrian army presence in those parts of the Syria.
Mm-hmm. So, but I've always tried to understand that what seems to be the major issue with all these people against Assad. I mean, why is Assad such a bad person according to all these people?
You see, and this is what happened when we, Ramazan, there is always a question of demonizing a government or a president or a country till you make sure that this terrorist organization join hands to attack the country. When they attracted in 2011 137,000 terrorists from 83 countries invaded Syria through Turkey, which have opened the border, trained them, cross-border terrorism. It was the #1 state-sponsored terrorism, Turkey, into Syria. And then we realized that they wanted to make sure how do you rally people behind them. They wanted to make sure that this president is a demon. That's why they tried. But because of the popularity and the support of the public, he could regain those ground. He could retain Syrian, major part of Syria, except for the part occupied by the United States and Turkey, which is the northern part of Syria, because they have a bigger objective of that. You know, we should see it not in isolation of what's going on in Syria, because President Assad is wanted by his own people. He may not have been able to recover from the economic harsh because of the American sanction on us. There is still date, but because of the people support him and rallying behind him, he could retain and stay in power. But these opposition, or they call themselves opposition forces, they don't belong to Syria. Maybe 1 or 2 factions are Syrian, the rest are not. But these are the people who have been promoted by Israel and by the Turkish government to create a problem inside Syria, because clean and divide is the policy of the United States in 1995. They wanted to weaken Syria, weaken Iran, weaken Iraq and Lebanon and Palestine. And Jordan is also on the card, because that is what is the picture of the axis of resistance that goes from Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Houthis in Yemen has to be broken. So when Trump comes, he will be able to reactivate Abraham Accord and bring more of the Arab countries, force them into a normalization with Israel without solving the problem of the Palestinian issue.
But that won't happen all that easily, as we can see. But sir, there was a time when Syria was almost synonymous with the ISIS, if you recall. I mean, they were all... Was the ISIS also placed there at the American behest? I mean, how did they manage to almost occupy a full country?
Well, let's be very frank on this. Spade is a spade. You remember the jihadist culture in Afghanistan. Who created Al Qaeda? I mean, the Americans themselves, Hillary Clinton said that the CIA, the ISI, and the Saudis who created Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. And they said that if they could topple a USSR, they can topple any country. So most of these jihadists went back to their home native home, and then they started creating havoc there. So Al Qaeda was there. Then we found ISIS, and we were in Iraq. I was embedded with the American troops. I understand the American policy in Iraq when they invaded Iraq, and we knew that 18 out of the 25 founders of ISIS were prisoners inside American prison inside Iraq. So let's not forget Abu Ghraib and Kripa. Where the American military bases were there in Iraq, and they were trained by the American, and they released them. So ISIS and Al Qaeda, nothing but a creation of the United States and the West to create havoc in this region.
Oh, I see. But then, you know, when they had those fights, if you recall, the Western powers tried to come and remove ISIS. Did that mean that ISIS had gone out of their hands, like it happened with the Mujahideen and all?
Well, they always use them as a tools because, see, this is a pretext for the American troops to stay in Syria. When President Trump had his pre-election campaign, he said that we are going to remove the American troops from Syria because this is illegally and we don't want it, neither in Syria nor in Iraq. Now, when Biden, before he's leaving, he has created more complication for Trump in Ukraine. He's now trying to create more trouble for the American inside Syria and Iraq, because by reviving of terrorist organization, there's a pretext for the United States to stay back in this country. And that's the only reason why this is happening. Secondly, which is the most important part, is that we wanted to break Syria into parts so you make it a weaker state, because it is the center of all the resistance into Lebanon, into Palestine, into from Iraq, into against Israel. So this is going to be a very decisive war, because that's what the creation of what Netanyahu has been talking about, the new Middle East order has to be created on Israel terms, is only can be done by breaking Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq and Iran.
That's interesting, sir, because I was thinking that maybe this is, just like Ukraine has become a playground for the US and Russia. Is Syria turning into something like that?
Well, absolutely, because see, this is the, as I said, do not see the war on the Middle East and isolation, what the big powers are doing. We are the pawns in the checkmate backgammons playing with us in Syria and Lebanon in this part of the world, because you see the American wanted to weaken Russia. They are trying to weaken Russia and Ukraine. They are trying to remove the military bases of Russia in Syria, which has been there for years. And that's the only place for the Russian in the Mediterranean Sea. So it's a part of the conflict of interest. And thirdly, which is China have playing a major role in this, because China is also having the Silk Route. It passes through Syria into the North Africa and Europe, because Syria is the center, a meeting point between the three continents, between Asia, between Europe, and between also Africa. So therefore, to break this will also help in containing China, in weakening Russia, and also bringing back the dominance of the United States, because Trump come to power, it's an America first policy. And as you know, there is no carrot this time. It is just the stick with he going to use to bring America back into the forefront.
So, I mean, I know you are in a hurry. I'll ask you a last question, sir, before we close. You mentioned that with Trump coming in, there might be some changes. And also the fact that, right now in Syria, where do you think it's headed in that sense, in a generic sense? Is this going to become another, Israel-Palestine kind of a long-drawn thing with no solution in sight? Or do you see some hope coming up? Personally.
See, we have faith. No, I think you must know that we have already faced this scenario before. This terrorist organization occupied Aleppo, occupied major part of Syrian cities, and they were defeated, they were killed, they were eliminated, they were pushed back. And there is only now to achieve the full objective of the Syrian government and the Syrian people. A, we need the international support in defeating terrorism. B, we have to defeat them and push them back, either eliminate them or push them back to where their motherland, Turkey, has brought them into Syria. None of the country, by the way, the 83 countries, are willing to take their terrorist mercenaries out of Syria. No country is willing to, according to UN agencies, which tried hard to send even the children of those illegal children of those mercenaries, but they refuse to accept them. So what do you want to do with these terrorists? Either you have to eliminate them, or otherwise they will be transferred to Azerbaijan, to Armenia, to Libya, to Afghanistan, and anywhere in the world they can do it. So therefore, I think it's a high time we should end terrorism from this part of the world, and fight once for all. All the world collectively should help us to fight terrorist organization.
Well, I do hope that comes true very soon, because it's been a long time since all this has been going on. Thank you so very much, sir. I appreciate you taking time out. Thank you. I hope peace prevails. That's all that I can say. Sometime it will happen. Thank you, sir, and I look forward to having you with us again.
Thank you so much. We hope that there is no regional war going to happen when Trump comes, even if the Israelis trying to drag Iran into a regional war, and hope not because the whole world will suffer and the global peace and security at risk, actually.
I hope that doesn't happen either. Thank you so much, sir. It was a delight talking to you, and I look forward to having you again.
Always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. That was Dr. Waiel Awwad talking to us about the recent developments in Syria and putting the whole situation into context. I do hope you enjoyed this particular edition of The Gist, and I look forward to having you with us again. Till then, this is Ramananda Sengupta signing out.